Serious. Whose life did you unintentionally screw up? Story 1. I can't blame myself too much, but this is all pretty recent, so I feel a little responsible. My best friend growing up used to have his grandpa take us home every day together. In high school, my best friend growing up dated this girl. They dated for roughly 2 or 3 weeks and ended it, so it wasn't very serious at all. Over a year later, I somehow ended up getting close to her and asked my friend if it was okay because of their previous relationship. He said it was fine and to go for it. Well, I did, and he didn't take it so well, but didn't really show it. Me and him had naturally grown apart at this time, but we're still good friends, just didn't hang out together daily. He was a bigger kid, but after that, he started losing weight like crazy. Then, not long after, the remains of his father's body were found when he passed away in a tragic accident during his childhood 12 years earlier. He also took this really hard, obviously. We grew completely apart, and I continued dating this girl through high school until we broke up senior year. He couldn't handle seeing us around each other, so we pretty much stopped talking altogether. Freshman year of college, though, we reconnected and spent some time together. It started becoming more frequent, and he was coming to parties with me, and we would hang out at his house. Around this time, though, I reconnected with this girl. We had some time apart, and getting back together at our age, we were taking it seriously. My friend didn't disappear this time, but I did notice he had slowly been drinking more. He was already drinking heavily before we got back together, but I thought it was just like all of us college kids were doing. We all drank, smoked, and generally did nothing if it wasn't schoolwork. One night, though, I went to his house and noticed it was a bit much. I watched him drinking full glasses of gin and eventually blacking out in the backyard. I moved him to his bed, and his girlfriend watched him all night. This was the last time we talked, and he removed all communication with me. Years went by, and I tried to reach back out. He and his girlfriend had a kid, but broke up. He had blocked me on Facebook, and if I tried to text or call, he wouldn't answer. Time just kept going, and I always thought about him. 3 weeks ago, I got a call that he had shot himself in his driveway. You can't help but wonder what you could have done or how much you contributed. I wished I had reached out. I don't think just the girl coming between us was the sole reason at all, but he had said to his girlfriend that he thought about taking his life. He said he couldn't do anything right, and he didn't have anyone to turn to. His life didn't go how it should have at all. He was top of our class and had such potential, but decided to go to a smaller school at home. He failed out and stopped going, while the rest of us moved on with our lives. I wish I would have tried more. Story 2. It was middle school, and we were taking one of those state-based tests. I don't really remember the name, but it was the history portion. Our history teacher wasn't the nicest woman, and she wasn't fair, so no one really was that thrilled to be in her class that day. I remember sitting down, carrying my backpack, and tossing it to the side. I was in a bad mood, and so I just kind of threw it down, not really caring about it. I just wanted to get this test over with and then take a nap, because they made us put our head down when we were done. 20 minutes into the test, and I'm blazing through it. I do love history, so I had no problem, despite our mean teacher. She was walking along each aisle, checking each person, making sure nobody was cheating. One kid already yelled at us, so we were afraid to look up. I saw her shadow approach from the left side, slowly working down the aisle. Afraid to look up, I stared at my paper, but a scream next to me spiked my head up. "Ah!" she wailed as her elderly body went flying, her body landing on the ground with a big whomp. She tripped on my backpack. I looked down in shock. "I can't get up. I can't get up," she wailed on the ground. I was frozen in fear when a teacher's aide ran to her. "Aide, go get the principal. Everyone out of the class," she yelled. We all were rushed into the hall. More teachers arrived, then the principal. An ambulance came as there was a hospital close by, and then she was taken away. "Did you trip the teacher?" Noodle tripped the teacher." It spread like wildfire. I was suddenly the kid who tripped the teacher. The next day we had a substitute and the principal in the class with us as we were about to finish the tests. This is why you're supposed to tuck your backpacks under your desk, not in the aisles. I never got in trouble for it. It was never pushed to my family. We got a replacement teacher who was actually really cool, and history became a lot more fun again. I learned later about our history teacher coming back. She had damaged her arm and hip permanently. needing a walker. She was getting medically retired, but came to say hello to some old students. I never saw her, but one of my best friends did. The teacher commented on, "It's important to forgive, especially those who have wronged you." She had stared directly at my best friend at this time, knowing she and I were close. The history teacher left the school that day, never to be seen again. Story 3. A friend of mine in high school, we were taking a statewide exam on European history, and the second part required writing 3 essays. 1 in response to a series of documents, and 2 extended response essays based on given prompts. All 24 of us took the exam in a large auditorium with nothing separating people, and yet you obviously were barred from talking or sharing answers, discussing questions, etc., general test stuff. Anyway, the essay section starts, and my friend next to me starts motioning to me on the side of the table with his hand. First, he holds up 2 fingers, then 3, then 2, then 3, repeated a few times. Now, I have no idea what this means. Literally 0, zilch, nada. And I'm terrified that we're going to get accused of collaborating and have our results nullified. So I just flash him a peace sign. 2 fingers. He nods and begins writing. Crisis averted? After the exam, I asked him, what was the point of the finger gestures? And he responded, "Oh, I was asking how many essays we had to write. Thanks for the help." Needless to say, he did very, very poorly on that exam. Messed up his life? Nah, no way. He went to a good school, graduated high in his class, etc., but I definitely messed up that class for him, and the guilt of it has been looming over me for years. Well, what do you know? It appears from the last 2 stories that there's a bad omen with taking history exams, and it poses a real risk of screwing up someone's life. But one of the purposes of history as a subject is to learn from the past and hope for a better future where we don't repeat the same mistakes. So let's all heed these warnings and be extra cautious if anyone has any upcoming state exams. Story 4. My parents. I came from a middle, upper-class family, so my parents paid for everything while I was in college. Housing, tuition, groceries, everything. I had my dad's credit card, and at 20, I started going out to the bar and spending lots of their money. They continued to support me, to pay for everything, and I continued to abuse it for years while ignoring their threats that they would shut off the credit cards, which they never did. My dad sent me a heartbreaking email one day that said I'd spent all of his retirement money, and they were struggling to pay the mortgage. It absolutely broke my heart, and I cried just thinking about it. It ruined my relationship with my parents. It's been a few years, and I'm making quite a bit of money now. Our relationships are better than they've ever been. At any opportunity I can, I send them money and will continue to do so until they tell me to stop. I will forever be indebted to them for everything they've done for me, and I'll do anything I can to help them live comfortably for the rest of their lives, because that's what they've done for me. To those who grew up in a loving family, don't ever forget how much your parents love you. Don't ever take it for granted like I did. Story 5. I guess you could describe him as the trenchcoat kid. Let's call him Bob because I don't want to keep referring to him as trenchcoat kid. It just feels wrong. Of my middle school. Bob was a pretty troubled kid and was picked on quite a bit by people. One day our class was at a nearby park for a type of relaxing field trip after midterms. Some of my friends and I were being dumb kids and sword fighting with sticks. I didn't know that Bob was nearby watching us, and during our sword fighting, I swung the stick around behind me trying to be cool. Turns out I accidentally hit Bob with it, and it was his last straw before breaking. He tackled me from behind and started choking me until I lost consciousness. I was told that one of my friends tried to pull him off, while others went to grab the teacher, but couldn't get him off me, even after I was out cold. He was expelled and sent to a juvenile correctional facility for what basically amounted to attempted red rum. I have no idea what happened to him since then, but I wonder how his life would have turned out if he had gotten help instead of shipped off like a criminal, all because I was being stupid and accidentally hit him with a stick. I wouldn't feel too bad for this kid. Yeah, he clearly had existing pent-up issues that should have been addressed sooner, but the fact that he snapped at you so brutally and got sent to a correctional facility could be the kind of help that he actually needed. These places are meant to correct behavior, after all, So maybe in the grand scheme of it all, he'll look back one day and think of this incident as a positive turning point in his life. Story 6. By sophomore year of college, I'd figured out a pretty good rhythm for partying really hard while still getting good grades. At the beginning of the semester, a friend of a friend joined our group. He was a freshman, super smart, and also extremely straight edge. He'd never drank or even really been to a party. None of us pressured him into anything, just invited him to join us, but he started to get into the college party vibe pretty quickly. I guess I just assumed everyone had the same work ethic towards school as me. Even though I went out a lot, I still studied every night, never missed assignments, etc. But apparently my new friend didn't get quite as good a rhythm. He started to miss class more and more, went out more and more, forgot about major projects, etc. He ended up failing his first semester of college, and last I heard from him, he joined the military and shipped out overseas. No clue where he ended up. Story 7. My friends, and subsequently her families, our group of friends decided to just go out one night and party like crazy. We were just being dumb and doing stupid teenage stuff. We were all reckless and thought we were invincible. And then she passed away. I don't feel like it was solely my fault, but I do feel like I contributed to ruining her life because I was there, and I was being as irresponsible as everyone around me. I get physically ill when I see posts about her every now and then. It's even worse when I interact with her parents, which isn't often, and I know that's terrible, but I can't bring myself to face them. I almost puked when they were tearfully telling my friends and me stories of my friends' childhoods and talking about the things they regretted with their parenting, as though them yelling at her over not cleaning her room or stuff like that while she grew up led to her passing. We were the worst thing to happen to her. Story 8. Pat, the alcoholic regular at the truck stop I used to work nights at, he used to come in every night for a bottle of Rumpelmans before heading home. He was clearly drunk, but a friendly and good-natured one. One day he stopped coming in, and nobody saw him for over a year. Then, during my last week on the job, he comes in to get gas, and I'm so glad to see him that I bought his traditional bottle of booze for him as a gift, since I was leaving. 6 months later, I learned that he had disappeared for that year to cut his ties in the area and move to the West Coast to sober up and get his life together. He had managed to kick the booze and start rebuilding his life when he came back to town to pick up some things from his old home before leaving the area forever. He was on his way out of town toward a new life when I gave him that bottle. He relapsed and ended his own life a few months later. Story 9. I was in high school when this happened, around 4 years ago. I had this classmate, let's call him Kevin, who was quiet and normally kept to himself. Others sort of found it weird, but nothing seemed out of the ordinary with him. One afternoon, during one of our classes, I see that there's a USB lying under Kevin's chair. At this point, I didn't know whether it was his or not, but I grabbed it anyway. Impulsively, I told my friend with a laptop to load up the USB and see what was inside. He didn't expect to find a poop ton of furry corn in there. Suddenly, Kevin comes bounding in, grabs the USB, runs back to his chair, and buries his head in his arms. Turned out he was a huge furry. After that, he was known around our batch for being the weird guy who's into furry stuff, and he had no idea that it was me who found his USB in the first place. Nah, I disagree on this one. You didn't ruin Kevin's life all on your own. Yeah, you probably shouldn't be snooping on other people's files, but also I can't think of any good reason for Kevin to have brought his private stash to school in the first place. That was a risky move on his part, and he paid the price by not taking more precautions in securing the things that he wanted to be kept secret. Story 10. Chatting about people and relationships and whatnot with my colleagues. Chill conversation, friendly banter. Then said something about another colleague apparently being with another colleague, was given a weird look. Boss asked me where I heard that, to which I replied to another colleague who was on sick leave at the time because of a surgery. They nod knowingly, and we begin talking about the weather or something. Colleague on sick leave was fired because they weren't supposed to tell people about the other two being together, apparently. My workplace has a good reputation in the industry, and our boss has a lot of connections. If they attempt to get a job in the industry anywhere in the future, they're going to get a lot less than stellar review from the boss, and probably will have an extremely difficult job finding a job. Whoops. Story 11. A new guy at my job, Bill, was bragging about his hot new girlfriend, Cassie. At our holiday party, before we go on leave for 2 weeks, I see him with a very pretty blonde, just kind of standing around. Since he was new, I decided I'd help break the ice, show them around, and meet some people. I walk over, introduce myself, say hi to Bill, and then say, "And you must be his girlfriend, Cassie. He's told us some great things about you." He goes white as a ghost. "No, I'm his wife, Rachel." I didn't know what to do, so I made an excuse that I must have mixed them up with another couple and made my escape. They got divorced a couple months later. Same deal goes for this guy as with the corn stash guy. If you play with fire, you're gonna get burned. OP shouldn't feel any remorse for what he did in this situation. All the blame falls on the guy who cheated, and he naturally paid the price that he deserved. Story 12. Man, this is hard. My druggy ex-boyfriend, just before we broke up, we were talking about heroin, why people end people's lives for it, and he said he would find us some, was my idea. We broke up, and a while after he said he found some, would I like to come over? I declined because I quit and was only a few months clean from drugs. He ended up using it and is now a full-blown addict. This makes me incredibly sad. I've turned my life around, and he wouldn't have bought the heroin if I kept my mouth shut. I heard from a mutual friend a while back. She said he lost all his teeth and his hair is falling out. He was such a great guy, but the drugs ruined him. Story 13. My best mates when we were 14 and 15. He was a typical rich kid whose parents paid for whatever he wanted. He was pretty spoiled, but he also understood you have to work to get things. His dad taught him well. Well, anyway, I got some weed off another guy in school and gave him his first session, and after that we were smoking it all the time. He moved back up north not long after and hit the hard drugs and is now smoking a lot of meth. I know it's not completely my fault, but I can't help but think if I hadn't given him that session, he would have never gotten into the heavier drugs. Story 14. I unintentionally messed up a friendship when I asked a longtime friend why his mom was using a walker. She hadn't before. He responded that she's 50 and getting old. It seemed like an odd response. Most 50-year-olds aren't using walkers. I told him that most 50-year-olds don't use walkers, and he told me she has had a hard life. I didn't think it was a big deal of a conversation at the time. 1 month later, I got a text from him telling me to never speak to him again because I talked down about his mom. I didn't mean to talk down, if I did, and now I lost a friend. Story 15. The one that I'm now trying to unmess up is my kids' dental health. I spent a few years caring more about pills than I did taking my kids to the dentist or just brushing regularly. Now when I have to take a kid to the dentist to repair the cavities and or root canals that I caused them to need, now that I can admit to the damage I did, I feel really bad and admit that I messed up and they're paying for me messing up their lives even just in this one way. Please leave your stories in the comments. I'd love to make a video of them in the future. Also, don't forget to like and subscribe.